Hey, everybody. It's Michael Ames, and you've got just me today. Bobby had something come up that he had to do. And apologies that this week we sent out the notice on the later side with how I would still sort of move ahead with this. We were trying to sort of wait and see whether we were going to be able to do it or not, but it's all good. So that's probably why none of you are able to tune in right now. So I will keep this, fairly short and to the point. But a lot of the stuff this week, as far as the criteria and things with sync, I think, are pretty straightforward. So but it's good to, I think, sort of go over these things. So on that point, at least as far as, figuring out these factors of the points of negotiation, I'm going to reference the handy dandy business basics for musicians, and just kind of blow through these real quick. I think, again, most of them are pretty self-explanatory. One of the first things is, who is the licensee that you're issuing a license to. Generally a major studio obviously is going to have a larger budget than an independent. Again, in video games and commercials, commercials really are the wild, wild west. Some of them are, of course, want to use music for free or low money. And then others are, lots and lots of money, which is, of course, what we in the biz like to pursue. And then there's the context, right? So is it a feature use? Is it prominent? Is there any dialogue going on? Especially if it's a feature, is it in a montage where all you hear is the music? Is it in the background? Are there other things, happening, going on? Are there not? Is it main or end title use? Those typically require more. Will in it, like a TV show or say even really a video game, will the song be used as a theme? These are all important criteria. The media. Now, back in the day when I was younger, we would be asked as publishers to quote on different media. Like, here's our initial media that we'd like to exercise, and then what would you charge for all of these options? And like for years, a lot of us, home video was an option, and you didn't license it up front, and it was a really big money payoff for everybody once home video kicked in. But these days, especially given the way media has changed, we're pretty much always licensing all media up front. For films, it's what's called broad rights, or all media now known or hereafter devised is the word or the phrase you'll typically see. In television, it typically is all media excluding theatrical, is the thing to sort of keep in mind. Let's see, there's the term. Again, naturally, the shorter the term, the lower the fee, the longer the term, the longer the fee. And these days, things are pretty much done in perpetuity, especially for film and television. It's really just the commercials that have a limited duration. They're usually going to be, sometimes it can be a day. Frankly, I've done commercials for one day, or a month, or, a lot of times these days it's 6 months or a year, depending. Exclusivity. Is it exclusive where no one else can use the song? Pretty much every license that any of you would ever issue in this sync world is going to be a non-exclusive license, because frankly, someone would have to pay a stupid amount of money to have you not want to license the song to anybody else. The only time we really run into exclusivity these days is in the area of commercials. But what they typically will do at that point is that they will want your exclusivity to be limited only to the category of product or service that the brand is in. So let's say a hospitality area, say it's a hotel, or cruise ships, or you name it, shoes, fast food restaurants. Like, there will be some of that that you have to sort of keep in mind. But generally, most of these licenses are going to be non-exclusive. Territory, are you licensing just for the US? Is it the world? Again, for most film and TV projects these days, it's going to be the world. The only real license where you're going to get into a US-only license is commercials. The tricky thing to keep in mind with commercials these days is and this world is changing so fast in the commercial world. You know, there was a time where it was still all focused on broadcast, and online media was a fairly small portion of it. Now, more and more brands, because they have the digital capability to track users, I mean, like it or not, all the stuff we do on Facebook or Instagram or everywhere else, everything we do is being followed and tracked. But you know, what becomes an interesting discussion in licensing music for commercials is the territory, because if it involves the internet, you know, in your perfect world, you want the internet to be what's called geo-gated, where no one outside of that specific territory can see the ad. But in a lot of cases, and especially here in the US, we don't really typically do geo-gating. It's usually more in more populous areas and continents like Europe, where there's so many countries so close together. They have to worry about those sorts of things, and their internet providers and other things are able to geo-gate things a little bit more carefully. But it typically doesn't happen here. So these days when we're quoting for commercials, you know, say it might be a 3-month commercial. Like, for example, we have a song. In fact, if you sort of see the poster behind me, Dirty Dancing, I represent a share of I've Had the Time of My Life from Dirty Dancing. You may have seen it in a Kentucky Fried Chicken ad over the last few months, because it was used to do the whole chicken and waffles thing that KFC is promoting. So, you know, we did that for a limited time, but it's also for online. So, you know, you have to kind of be careful of, is this a brand that is popular outside, say, the United States? You don't really want to be licensing something for, say, a lower fee, but it's going to kind of be seen all over the internet for the world. So it's one of these items and discussions that, you know, you have to kind of get into and explore whether things can be geo-gated or not. Enough of that on territory. Credits. You know, will there be any sort of credit listed for you? You know, films for sure typically have end title credits that you can have music listed in. And they try to use that to their advantage, of course. TV, rare that you'll get an on-screen credit, but there's so many internet sources now, like tunefind.com or tvshowmusic.com, where you can actually get a credit. But it's not like the show is giving you the credit. It just happens to be a website that is tracking all the music use in music-intensive shows, so that you know, that becomes a great way to even promote, you know, your music that was used. The timing of it, again, as you would expect, the shorter the use, the smaller the fee. The longer the use, the larger the fee. Stature of the artist and the song, I think, again, is pretty, you know, self-explanatory. If it's a well-known song, you're going to get more money. If it's a completely unknown song, you're going to get less money. So, you know, those are all the typical you know, criteria that one goes through. And you know, most of you, it doesn't look like everybody's posted homework yet, but you know, again, most everyone has gotten, you know, a pretty good sense of these things. And let's see here, just looking very sort of quickly, you know, most everyone is, you know, it's not like there's any right or wrong answers per se, but for you know, the Pulp Fiction use that Bobby has asked you to comment on with "Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon," you know, yes, it was. I would say it's a big studio. It was Miramax at the time, and they were kind of an indie studio. But you know, the use was pretty long, so that was certainly going to influence the fee. They certainly got, you know, credits at the end. But one of the things that's a sensitive issue is there was drug use in the scene, is a bit violent. You know, these are things that, you know, a production has to disclose. It's because it may very well be an issue for the publisher or the artist, or both, in case they're different. You know, so I'm, you know, to some degree, that is could possibly influence the fee, but the context is a little bit more of just like, hey, look, we'll pay you X fee, but do you mind if it's in this context? It's more of an association thing. I used to work with the Bob Marley estate, and you know, they they were making a point of trying to have the music not be used in scenes where there was drug use. All right, so we have Pulp Fiction was long. There's the context. Yes, it was a major thing, but it was a great use, a prominent use. With The Matrix, Rage Against the Machine was used over the at the end of the movie, moving into the end titles. That's a really big consideration. It was very prominently used. And on the opposite end of the credits, we have the Shrek use of All Star by Smash Mouth. And that opened up the movie. So, and in that one too, a little bit even more so with the Matrix use. Yes, that was end title credits, but I mean, in the case of Shrek, like as I recall, when they were making the movie, like they animated to the song. So it's not, maybe a different song other than Rage Against the Machine could have been used in the Matrix over that whole bit in the end title credits. But as I recall the story once, is that the Shrek thing was they literally cleared the song before they even animated. So that's something that, comes into play in all this. They have to lock in that fee. And frankly, as a publisher, we usually get asked to keep quotes open for a certain period of time. So in the case of Shrek, I'm sure they had to keep that quote open for a fairly long time once they, gave the green light on the animation. So let's see, with regards to, the clips of the movies where you were being asked to comment on the score and the mood and does it set, these sorts of things can, are a reasonably subjective kind of thing. But, I think it's always interesting, and those of us who work in the use of music in film, it's hard sometimes to allow yourself to get into a scene. And I think these days, any score that actually kind of takes you into that and away from thinking about like, oh, they wrote that kind of interesting, and oh, I wonder how much that cost or what have you. There were some really good examples. All of you guys too, obviously got the Jack Black Led Zeppelin thing spot on. The director couldn't just use it. They've got to get permission. And I actually hadn't even heard of this particular, request that Jack Black did with the whole cast, to Led Zeppelin. I actually didn't find out about that until Bobby and I, met up and I started speaking in his class. I just think it's an awesome, way to request a song. And there have been similar stories, over the years of different directors doing similar things. But, to me, that Jack Black thing is just fantastic. So let's see, on the PRO front, you were asked to, go visit at least one of the PROs, see what they charge, see if it's, different, and which one would you join. I won't necessarily comment on each individual, sort of one, but, you all pretty much, again, covered the same stuff. At ASCAP, they charge $50 as a writer to join, $50 as a publisher. BMI, free as a writer, $150 as a publisher, or $250 if you're a corporation or partnership or, LLC. CSAC is free to join, but it's by invite only. Similarly, Global Music Rights, which is of the fourth PRO here in the United States, is an invite only thing pretty much for high earning songwriters and artists. It was started by Irving Azoff. And then there's even a new one now on the scene called Pro Music Rights that's focusing in the R&B world. But, we'll sort of see how that develops over the next bit. As to which one to join, I always, whenever I get asked that question, I say, go meet your local representatives. Pablo and Regenia had made a comment that one of them had a meeting, or no, they were at a class and someone from BMI had come to speak to the class, and they, spoke to them afterwards and found them to be very helpful. I just think, especially if you're a songwriter and an artist, you need as many devoted team members as possible for you. So I always suggest go to all the three main PROs, ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. Explain what you do, see if they're interested, would help you. Each society has different programs to help support artists. and songwriters. Some do, writing camps. Both of them do like a film and TV workshop for film composers. There are many that do. ASCAP does a pop song workshop. They all get involved in different things, which I think is great. So I think go to each of them, see where you can find, an ally, basically, someone who will be on your team that you think will give you some help. But if you were to do it maybe strictly on the financial, you might do sort of ASCAP because it's $100 versus the $150 in total if you were to join ASCAP or BMI is both a writer and a publisher. One thing I will say that I kind of want all of you who are songwriters to keep in mind is that, BMI has made a writer membership free because they're like, oh, hey, it doesn't cost anything to join as a writer, and you don't need to join as a publisher because we can pay you your publisher share through your writer account. And yes, they can do that, but that's really not advisable, especially if you're going to get things used in film or television, because a cue sheet, which you've read about in the book, is a chronological listing of all the music that's in a project, and they've got one column for writer and one column for publisher. And if your name is in both columns, a society other than BMI isn't necessarily going to know that the arrangement is that the publisher share is to be paid through your writer account. So, you run the risk of, especially internationally, of you losing your publishing money when it's that way, because most societies these days are ingesting cue sheets on an electronic basis, and they're trying to match up, writers and publishers with the master listing called the IPI listing. So if you expect to be doing a fair amount of licensing of music and film and television, I would never just join as a writer. Always join as a writer and a publisher so that you can list a proper publisher in the publisher column on the cue sheet. It's an investment well worth it. What is it? What's the word? Not psychologically. Just addressing the membership of the organizations. ASCAP and BMI is run by writers and publishers. There's some that feel that's important to them. BMI, which stands for Broadcast Music Inc., its board of directors are broadcasters. So, one could, ASCAP certainly over the years has said, well, hey, we're run by writers and publishers. Wouldn't you rather be with an organization that has someone like that that's at the helm? And as opposed to the broadcasters, but ASCAP and BMI especially compete with each other fairly intensely, and you can certainly get attention at one over the other, and sometimes at the higher levels, advances might get paid. If you're ever in a co-writing situation on a regular basis, it might be interesting to have one at ASCAP, one at BMI. Because then you can each see how the other gets paid, and whoever gets paid the lesser amount would be able to go to their society and say, hey, look at my co-writer. They got paid X more than I did. And many times these days, these days of competition, the society in question will match the difference and make it so that you are paid equally. So something to keep in mind. Should you do a lot of steady co-writing with one or more people, you can maybe split the society memberships. But it's, I think it's interesting. The societies play an extremely important role in anybody's career. And of course, for all of us, they help us deal with performance income all over the States, which can be pretty significant. So, I'm not going to go over the extra credit because I'm not sure if everyone did it, but if you have any specific questions on the extra credit, send us a note via Canvas and to both of us, and we can get you the answer key to that. And really, next week is the midterm, so make sure that you can take it the midterm with an open book. This is the nature of an online class. You could even work with your partner, but even if you were to do it together, you need to make sure that you're all taking the own midterm separately. You've been doing everything up to now as partners, but each midterm, obviously you can't take one midterm for the two of you because the way Canvas is set up, it can't grade you both. So just everyone take their own separate midterm. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. And we'll certainly be keeping in touch with you guys. I hope everyone's enjoying the class, and definitely reach out to us with any questions you ever have. That's what we're here for. And I think that's it. For those that see this now, do make sure that that everyone does the homework. I don't think everyone has posted yet, and everything should happen by midnight tonight. The new week opens up tomorrow, which is that midterm. So I'm going to sign off for now. So any questions, give us a note, and good luck on the midterm, and we'll all be in touch soon. Thanks so much.